Hi everyone and welcome back. So we have written our cat controller in the last video, and this is the third video of this series. What we have done is we defined all the annotations for the get and for the post, right? Like API operation, HTTP code, OK response, bad request response, internal server response. The same will be exposed to the Swagger UI. If you see our Swagger UI somewhere, here you can see all these things. And you can also see the schema of this payload, right? It is exposed because we are using DTO and the class validator schema, and this is the get on, right? So this is very basics we have done. Now next thing we are going to talk about is some core or the common modules, common components of nestjs. Like, okay, I have created a cat module, maybe I will create dog module, elephant module or something like that. We'll create a particular folder. Inside that I will have a cat listing, cat things, then dog things, and all these things in a separate folder inside domain module. And then I will import all these modules to the app module, like cats module, dogs modules, and all. This is how it works. It will expose all the controllers and we are able to access those APIs. Okay, now next thing is let's talk about the common things we are always going to have. Most of the time we always need a middleware, like auth middleware or logger middleware or something like that. Auth middleware, like you have to validate the request before hitting your actual API. Then in that case you would need a middleware. Sometimes you need a decorators. Custom decorators means you are getting a request payload. You always wanted to modify the request object and add the user object inside it, or add the token inside it. So all your services or all your controllers can access that properties from the one place. Okay, once you set it, I can access the roles, the user data, all these properties there. Let's say talk about common. So here I will talk about simple middleware. Let's say auth.middleware.ts. So auth middleware can be as complex as you want. I mean, if we just talk about a simple auth middleware, what auth middleware is doing is it just checks your authorization token, and it just check, okay, whatever you are doing is actually fine or not, right? Like the token, it will decode the token and it will say, okay, your token is valid or not. If token is invalid, then it will just say, okay, you are not authorized to access this particular API. And this kind of middleware, we are doing it in the same way we were doing it in the Express. So I will just use the simple example for now. Okay, and I will try to explain this. I will use my own example which I have written earlier. So let's say if I import this request response next function, we are getting from Express authorization, HTTP exceptions. So let's import all these things. Okay, this is a simple middleware. What this middleware can help us is, okay, you are getting some token and all these things inside your authorization, and I will help you to validate that this particular thing is there or not. So we will be using some particular service in our code to validate, okay, the token is coming is valid or not. So that we will do the dependency injection here, but currently we don't have, so forget about it. But like what we are saying is we are checking the authorization header. If it is not there, then we are just directly calling. If it is there, then we will be calling some API. Okay, like this is this dot service, particular service, and dot validate, or we'll be passing this authorization token, and this authorization token will return true or false, and based on that only, either it will return some data or true or false. Based on that we will say next. Okay, currently based on this code, whatever we have written, it will block all the requests if you don't have an authorization token there. If it is false, then it will throw a missing authorization header. But it will not throw now, but you have to plug this in with your module. Like, okay, I want all the requests to pass through this middleware, right? In that case, you have to plug this in with your module definition. And how we can do this? So this is the middleware you have created. Now you will simply just go to your module, the main module or the feature module in which you have written your APIs, okay, and you will write some code snippet which nestjs is providing. Let's say I'm adding this on my cat module, and what is the middleware name, just so that we can use it, auth middleware, and we are inside a cat module. So cat module, it should implement nest module, and here we can actually use the configure method. Public configure, a lot of things are there. Inside that we will be passing the consumer, and it will be your middleware name. Okay, and here you will validate it, consumer dot, whoever is consuming, we will apply this middleware, which is auth middleware. Now interesting thing here is, I mean, it's not necessary that you will apply this to all the routes. You can decide, okay, I want to exclude from these set of routes, and I wanted to apply only for these routes. So exclude means you can say these API v1 health one, API v1, let's say cat, and something, and maybe you have defined this particular route. This you want to exclude, and rest all, if path is API v1, so it will still exclude that first one, and it will include all these things which we have defined here. Methods can be wildcard, like all methods which are starting, all the HTTP methods, method equal to request method dot all. I think what is the problem here? So what we are saying is we are excluding this particular route, and we are including all the routes that is having this particular pattern. It is request method, we need to import. I hate importing everything. I mean, importing things one by one. It's like we can import all these things together so we don't see these warning errors. So this is how we can use the middleware. Now I have added this into the cat module. It can be like you can add this to the global in the app module. Let's say API v1 health, I wanted to exclude, and I wanted to include all the routes of all the HTTP methods starting with API v1. Okay, this is an example of our middleware. Similarly, we can also create the interceptors and all these other things. Let's take a look onto this. You can also create a simple logger middleware that will just log things based on your request or response. It can be a simple HTTP logger, right? I will just copy and paste this for the example. Here we have common auth middleware. We can also create logger.middleware.ts, and it will be just doing simple HTTP logging, and you can just include it everywhere. I mean, for all the routes we have in the definition. Now next thing is, if you're not specifying, let's say I'm creating cat, I'm not specifying the name and breed, then I will see some message, right? I will see, okay, the name is required, message is required. How can we customize these messages coming from any kind of exception from the API? I can create an interceptor for that. An interceptor will be exception interceptor. So all the exceptions we are getting, it will wrap that exception into a particular message. It's like a serialization of the exceptions or the errors you are getting from the APIs. Okay, we are writing the APIs because from the joy validations and from the data validations we can get different set of errors coming. Okay, so that we can write. Similarly, we can also write, let's say common. Here I will be writing interceptors, pipes, filters. Okay, so we have created two middlewares. Create exception interceptors, like if there are exceptions occurring, how we can intercept and how we can modify the new message and send the status code. So let's say create exception interceptor .ts. Okay, and I will just use the existing code provided by nestjs documentation, so that we can use to just update the exception message which we are getting. So there is a exception we are getting that is not handled, then you can actually rewrite the message and send the custom code like bad gateway we are sending. Similarly, there is a exception filters. This is also called a serialization of the response messages. So most of the time we are getting is okay, one liner response message, but I want more information when that incident happened, like the date and time when we receive this response message, response code, and from which particular resource. That you can do with the exception filter. So we can create that, and that will have the same predefined set. What we are doing is we are getting the response, request, status code, and if you are globally applying this exception filter onto the app instance, then what it will do is it will just check, okay, whatever the response you are sending, I'm going to send the response something like this. So whatever the data, this is only applicable for the exceptions, not with the data formats. Status code, timestamp, and on which particular request URL this particular exception has occurred. And how do we apply all these things in our code? I mean, either we can apply these exception filters and all on global level or at the controller level, and you can see catch HTTP exceptions. So it is catching only HTTP exceptions, which are like, there are many HTTP exceptions we have in the application, like bad request, not found, internal server error, bad gateway, and all these things. So at controller level, you can actually associate these exception filters. Middlewares can be applied at the module level. So this is all for this video, and we can actually write a lot of things at the controller level, like use interceptors, use middlewares, and all these things. Let me just try what all annotations we have with the use. It will come up. Okay, use pipe, use interceptor, use filter, use container. So we should target about use guards. You can create a custom guard and add it. Use pipes, use interceptors, like we have created an exception interceptor, right? Use filters. So exception filter we have created, that is the best place to put it here. Use filter and pass the module name. Similarly, use pipe, the definition we are already using. This is the existing validation pipe that is doing our DTO validations. So use filters, use interceptors, all these things can be added at the controller level or at the module level. Okay, thanks everyone.